The Middle East is a hotbed, has been forever, and it hadn't cooled off any. And so the policies that the president will put in place that will affect the peace of Israel, the peace of the Middle East, the stability of it, especially when I was there not long after October 7th, and I could see what are the worst things that could happen. Well, I saw it. You don't ever want to see that again. And you just pray that God can use me, this is my prayer, so that that never happens ever again.
I, Mike Huckabee,
I, Mike Huckabee,
do solemnly swear
that
I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
and I take this obligation freely,
And I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties of the office
discharge the duties of the office
on which I am about to enter.
on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So, help me God.
Mr. Ambassador, it is an honor to be sitting with you here in the Mike Huckabee Theater, but Mike Huckabee's taking his show on the road. What's happening?
Well, not long after the election, I'm sitting there. In fact, I just finished a staff call with our show staff.
Yeah.
And minding my own business. And then my phone rings. I never answer a phone if I don't recognize the number and if it doesn't come up with someone who's in my directory. But this was a number I didn't recognize, no name on it. Something told me, answer this call. And out of character, I hit the receive button and President Trump was on the line. And so I'm thinking, okay. And he says, as he likes to get right into it, I want you to be the ambassador to Israel.
My goodness.
And it
that
just
quickly. Right there.
Just cut to the chase. Let's get into it. And I was floored because I had not lobbied for it. I had not spoken to him about it, not once. I honestly thought there was someone else who was going to get the position, which I was delighted with because I was loving what I do. I had a good life, good life. And this really kind of took me completely off balance. But the one thing I can say is that all the things that he might have said, would you do this, take this cabinet position, this, and I would have said no. This was the one thing that I really couldn't say no to because of my deep involvement with Israel, going back almost 52 years, back to 1973.
How long did it take you to respond to Donald Trump in regard to, yes, sir? What I mean, how did that play that out for us?
As I recall, and again, I'm trying to recollect my thoughts because I was so stunned, but I think I said, are you sure that there's not someone else that you want to put in this position? And he said, no, I want you to do it. And I've got my mind made up, and you're the guy. I want you to do it. And I'm sure I paused again and said, well, do you think I'll be confirmed with the Senate? Oh, yeah, that won't be a problem. And I think it just took me a minute to collect my breath.
Yeah.
And I really believe it was just so out of the expectation. That's what it was. And if I'd had a little bit of a heads up, a couple of days notice, you're going to get a call.
Yeah.
So be thinking about it. But on the other hand, it was a call that was as clear a call, not the phone call, but I think it was a call from above. And that's how I felt, that it was as clear a call of ministry, a call of duty. And, to be able to serve your country and your president in a capacity through a position that you really do have passion for.
Yeah.
Because of the longstanding relationship with Israel.
You did on that call say yes.
I don't know that I had an option.
Can I call Janet?
It's sort of like it's a command performance when the president says,
You're the
I want
guy.
you. You remember those posters where Uncle Sam is pointing?
Yeah.
I want you.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I felt.
Yeah.
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 And you know what's interesting? It could have been God's finger pointing at you at the same time, because this is as serious as it gets to literally represent the United States as ambassador to the nation of Israel.
To God's country.
And by the way, the first evangelical Christian appointed.
I still believe it is the promised land. It's holy ground to Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Since 1948, when Israel was finally recognized as an independent Jewish state, it has always been under attack. The first nation to officially recognize Israel was the United States.
You've been TBN family for, and you know, I looked down on here, and the Huckabee show launched on October 7th in 2017. Isn't that something?
We're sitting here, we've had the anniversary of October 7th, which is a date that will live in Jewish and global history. One of the worst atrocities. I guess getting right into it, that has to be one of your main objectives on day one after confirmation, to get those American hostages back.
The hostages have been there for an absolutely untenable long time. I have met with hostage families. I have visited with victims, families from October 7th, and people who were there, who survived it, and tell the harrowing tale of being under the threat and thinking they were not going to live through the day. I was there not long after this happened. I've been there twice since it has happened. And it is so stunning when you hear the stories and realize the massacre that took place that day. This was a vicious, cruel, barbarian, horrific crime that was made worse by the fact that the people who carried it out were proud of it. They wore cameras on their bodies so that they could record their slaughter of civilians, including babies and women. And the horrific things that were done to those people were done first to inflict the greatest amount of pain and suffering, and secondly, the greatest amount of humiliation. And it's just not the kind of thing that a human being could conceive of doing to another human being, but to be proud of it and want people to know what they did is the reason that Hamas cannot continue in any form. They must be eradicated. And the Israeli government is absolutely right, and the world is wrong when they say, have a ceasefire, let's calm this down. No, there has been no reason to believe that Hamas will ever enter into any kind of honorable agreement. And if they were willing to, they would have already released the hostages long before.
There's an American being held right now in Gaza named Idan Alexander. And knowing every day that he's being tortured, his suffering, and that of his family back in New Jersey is one of the central urgencies of my staff and my team. I think that one of your most important missions, should you be confirmed, is getting the release of the hostages and aiding to the end of this nightmare.
And let me say emphatically that it would not be one of the most important things that I would consider on my duty list, if confirmed. It would be the most important thing. That American citizen from New Jersey that you care deeply about and you've worked so diligently with, and I'm deeply grateful for the efforts you've made with that family. That has to be the first item of business before anything else.
What are some of the initiatives that mean something to you, that will mean something to the administration, President Donald Trump's 47 agenda? What do you need to get done over there? What needs to happen, Mike?
You know, President Trump has been the most effective pro-Israel president in history. None like him. He moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem when the whole world told him not to do it, but he did it. He recognized Jerusalem as the eternal, indigenous, rightful capital of the Jewish state. That was big. He recognized the Golan Heights as being legitimately the land of Israel. He created a breakthrough historic agreement in the Abraham Accords. which brought partnerships and trade agreements, tourism agreements, and peace agreements between Israel and Muslim countries. That would have been unthinkable not very long ago. But it has been to the benefit of all of those countries.
There's no reason that there's not a build upon the Abraham Accords. They were historic, significant in so many ways, and brought the reality that whether it's trade or tourism or the sharing of military intelligence for everyone's safety and security in that region are all benefited. Nobody is looking at taking somebody else's territory and moving into their sovereignty. At that point, it becomes an opportunity to bring a real sense of peace for all of the people of the Middle East, whether they are of Jewish or Arab descent. So I believe the president is in an incredible position to build upon what he did in his first term, expanding the Abraham Accords to include not only the Saudis, but other Gulf state nations.
And one of the big agenda items is to take that which is already the foundation of his policies and expand upon them, to expand the Abraham Accords, to include more of the Muslim countries. And why not? Israel is never going to attack Saudi Arabia. They're never going to attack Qatar.
Right.
They're just not. They don't want their land. All they want is what God gave them 3,500 years ago. That's all they want. And then to be left alone and to allow their people to live with a level of security and safety that they had taken away from them during the Holocaust and almost had taken away from them October the 7th. That's not an unreasonable goal on the part of the state of Israel. And it's not unreasonable the United States would stand with our ally in helping them to achieve that.
That's why I am honored and privileged to be able to be named by this president to serve in this capacity, because I like his sense of clarity when it comes to the moral issue of standing with an ally. And right now, Israel needs an ally. And frankly, let me add, the Jewish people need to know they have friends. There's a long line of enemies that the Jewish people experience across this globe, and sadly, on some of our own university campuses. It's going to be a privilege to be able to be one of those people, not Jewish, Christian, in fact, but to say to our Jewish friends, you will never go through what you've gone through alone. We will stand not behind you, we will stand with you.
What would you say, Mr. Ambassador? I'm not sure whether to call you governor or Mr. Ambassador or
Mike is fine.
Mike or the illustrious potentate, I think is what he wants me to call him. But
Your Excellency would be fine. That would be great.
For people that don't study politics and are not a political person like you were a governor of a state, you get politics. You ran for president twice.
That I announce that I am a candidate for President of the United States of America.
What is the main role of the U.S. ambassador to Israel? What's the most important thing? What are you going to go do?
The main job the ambassador of Israel has is obviously to carry out the president's policies. An ambassador has to be very careful that he or she does not go in thinking, I have some real ideas here, I'm going to get them done. Because you are an ambassador, just like a Christian believer is an ambassador for Christ. That person doesn't carry his own message. He carries the message of Christ. Right. If you're an ambassador for a country, your job is to take the message and the policies of the only person who got elected. So I'm very mindful of the fact that on November the 5th of 2024, there was only one person who got elected that day. That was Donald J. Trump. He's the president. So everyone in his administration, whether they're cabinet officials or employees or whether they're ambassadors, they work and serve at the pleasure of the president. So you have to be mindful of that and not go rogue, thinking that somehow I've elevated myself to a position that one simply doesn't have. So it's to carry out those policies. One of the reasons that I feel comfortable in accepting the role is because having seen Donald Trump's policies toward Israel in his first 4 years, it's easy to want to salute that flag and serve this president because his policies brought the highest level of peace to the entire Middle East that we have seen in a couple of generations.
Yeah.
What we have to do today is, I think, first of all, breathe a sigh of relief that Israel and America's policies on behalf of it are going to be in good hands. Congratulations. This is something that, like you said, it was, Uncle Sam pointing his finger, but I think God was also pointing his finger and saying, this is a big job and I need somebody to get there and get after it. Next year in Jerusalem, we'll see you there. But the other part of this story that I kind of wanted to do is rewind the clock a little bit. And a lot of people remember the Huckabee show on Fox, okay? So Saturdays, you were our guy. You were our non-combative host. You didn't yell at people. You didn't, scream and yell. You had an audience. You played some music. You were a little bit different. You've always been a little bit of a fish out of water in regard to news broadcasts. And you ran for president. You ran for president in 2008, then again in 2016. Somewhere along the line, and I'm going to call it 2011, my dad just had to meet you, okay? He was watching you and your broadcast on Fox and kind of pointed and said, if we were ever going to get into this news commentary thing, he's the guy. Well, you were happy at Fox, and somehow we ended up at a steak restaurant. Laurie, me, my dad, and you. We're in New York. It felt like that conversation was, what do you remember about it at some point?
Well, I remember that we sat down and visited. There was no agenda per se. It wasn't like there was an offer on the table, and I wasn't in the position where I could have accepted it had there been one.
Right.
Because I was under contract with Fox for, I don't know how long at that point going forward. But we just had a great fellowship. I won't call it a visit because it was Christian brothers getting to know each other as much spiritually as it was politically or in some form of television industry terms. Your dad was a remarkable man. I really, really loved being around him. He was brilliant. Had such a business savvy to him, as you obviously know. Saw things in the future that other people weren't seeing. I think he may have seen somewhere out there on the horizon a Huckabee show on TBN. I was not at that point in a position where I could see it, but I think he did. And I remember it was just a sort of a general discussion that if for some reason that I ever were to sever the relationship or discontinue doing the show on Fox, just give him a call and let's see what might happen. So there wasn't any attempt to lure me away, nothing like that. But the seed was clearly planted.
You know what I want to make a note of is if you take the world according to 2024, 2023, 2024, we're, even 2025 now. And if you kind of take some of the things going on in the world, and then you wind back to the time we had that steak dinner in New York, it was like a different planet. In a lot of ways. And there are just some things that society has tolerated. Feels like some of it is, not being tolerated as much anymore, which feels like good news from a biblical standpoint. But my dad, you got to remember something, Mike, my dad wasn't really about beautiful sets like this. He wasn't about, the production value. If you're a little out of focus, if the lighting wasn't exactly right, if your mic was, kind of scratchy, if he didn't care much about, he didn't care much about any of that kind of stuff. It was a different world back in 2012. So I'm picking up on what you said. Maybe he was seeing into the future some, because if we were there to meet you, and if there was this unspoken agenda that, hey, if you're never at Fox, give us a call kind of vibe, which I concur. That was kind of the feeling. There was no offer. There was no,
Well, even him wanting to go meet somebody was super uncharacteristic of him. It was like
to get him on a plane and fly him across the country, and that was a little unusual for us. And so, but think of it, he knew what kind of show you had on Fox.
Yeah.
And he was seeing the need for it then. What are you? Common sense. What are you? You're explaining things to us that are really complex political matters that you break down and give us your take on it. And he saw that coming. Now, he never saw your show on TBN. He was gone before.
Oh, I think he saw it from the best seat in the
He
house.
watches.
When the
watches
signal
every day.
went shooting past heaven. Yeah, got it. Okay, I agree with you. But at some point, you know, we got together when the end of the 16 campaign. And here we sit today, again, 378 shows later, 1,134 guests, and 63,000 people have sat in your audience here. And we're so proud of the content.
And they have come out from all over the country.
We have in the audience on any given taping, people from as many as 27 states in a single show.
Single program.
Never less than 13 or 14 states.
Isn't that something?
We're talking Washington State, Oregon, Maine, Delaware, from literally coast to coast, Arizona, California, and everywhere in between.
I remember one day I got a phone call from my aunt and uncle, and the big crew from Arizona was coming over, like about 10 of them.
Of your relatives.
Of my relatives. They hadn't called me for a seat or anything. They would just say, hey, we're
They were
on
on
the
their
Huckabee show.
So, you know what we ought to do? We ought to organize to meet up in Jerusalem sometime after you'll be living in Jerusalem, Israel, for, you know, this stretch of time.
Amazing.
If that gets to an end, you know, at some point, we'll welcome you back. If we're you know, still doing TV, if it's not all VR glasses or some kind of new technology that we don't know about. But
well, and you have a beautiful TBN studio over there too to go
There
to
is a
any
wonderful
time.
studio in Jerusalem, no doubt.
And we welcome you to stay connected to the TBN audience with your agenda on behalf of Israel and all of that. The show started in 2017 with a bang.
Here's Mike Huckabee.
Have we got a show for you? I'm not sharing nothing.
This is heaven here.
Absolutely fantastic.
I love you.
Is there a Democrat in here?
It's pretty incredible.
You were sitting with the President of the United States, Donald Trump. That was your first show. Your thoughts on this 7-year period that we've been trying to do TV together?
It's really been the most wonderful journey ever. And in part because we got to do what you and I sat down and talked about in early 2017, when we first kind of mapped out what the show would look like. Quite frankly, your vision for the studio and the theater here was far greater than mine. I mean, I would have been happy if we just left it like it was, and we could have come in with a very small stage and just lived with it as it was. You insisted, nope, we're going to turn this thing into something incredible. And I'll tell you something, every single guest we have that comes who has done the talk show circuit, they've done everything from Leno to Letterman to Kimmel and Fallon, they've done them all. Every person, without an exception, has said, this is the finest production, studio, and theater in the entire country, bar none. Doesn't matter which network. This is the finest. And the experience that people have. But let me tell you what I think a lot of the magic has been over these 7 years. We have an incredible team, unbelievable, that have acted like family. People get along behind the scenes as much as they do on stage. When people see what appears to be the camaraderie between Trey and Keith and me on stage, what they don't see is that backstage, those folks who are meeting our guests, every guest will write us and say, that was the most wonderful experience. Everyone treated me so wonderfully and kind. And it's true of everyone running a camera. It's true of every single person, whether they're the people that meet the audience and bring them in. Now, they don't get to see the people sitting up in the booth, you know, the ones moving the buttons so much because the guests are kind of isolated. And it's a doggone good thing they can't see those people.
Those guys moving those buttons.
I love you so much.
They're the only exception. No, they're really great. But through all of it, there's a camaraderie and an esprit de corps among the team that is just the best I've ever worked with. Way better than anything I've ever experienced in government, way better than anything I ever experienced in the secular television world, as you can understand. And that's why I think that 7 years honestly seems more like 7 months.
My goodness.
It does not feel like I've been here this long. And when people say, tell me about TV, do you enjoy doing that? I said, it sure beats working. Because it's like a joy.
Yeah.
It has been like something I've never gotten where I thought, oh, I got to go to Nashville this week. I got to do another show. I've never, ever felt like that. And it was always an anticipation, the just privilege of working with people who cared what they did. They wanted to be professional. I'll put the production team on this show against anybody in any television facility in the country. Nobody has a better production than this show does. Not because of me, because I'm not a production guy. That's not my thing. I can see it and tell you if it is really good, but the people that make that work do it with such a level of perfection and just quality, because they genuinely care about how it's going to come across, not just to have some pride in it, but it's done as unto the Lord, because we have people here who do this as a mission and a ministry, and not just because there's a check involved.
If somebody was interviewing me about an unexpected moment in our time on television, I can think of a few things. I remember getting comments about some things that I didn't feel were epic at the moment, but the audience perceived it differently. And there were some times when I thought something was epic and then never heard anything much about it later. And
then some things were just dumb people loved it.
Yeah, I was finishing an episode of Real Videos one time and went over to my Rottweiler, who was in the back of the pickup truck, and started kind of getting him to howl,
Joy to the world.
Joy to the world. And she was sitting there howling with me. And I heard about that for 20 years after that. When you had the credits running, you had your microphone up to your dog's mouth howling. Okay. So unexpected moments over the 7 years that really turned into something significant. What pops into your mind when you search your memory of, man, this was something, but it turned into something big over the course of time. So I remember one that pops into my mind, that one of your guests was arrested prior to getting to the show.
Yeah, Peter Navarro.
Yeah. What was that all about?
Well, Peter Navarro was Donald Trump's trade czar. Longtime college professor, brilliant guy, and he was very effective. And he was the one that helped Donald Trump craft a lot of the trade agreements that brought jobs back to the country. When Peter Navarro was sent before the J6 committee, they were demanding that he tell them conversations that he and the president had. Well, that's, quite frankly, incredibly unconstitutional, because there is a absolute separation between the branches of government, the judicial, the executive, and the legislative. And the legislative cannot compel the executive to share conversations that are privy to the president and his immediate staff and cabinet. So Peter Navarro, when he was demanded to come to Congress and testify to personal conversations, said no. And for that, he was held in contempt of Congress, so was Eric Holder during the Obama years. Yeah. Eric Holder didn't get anything more than a G, you shouldn't have done that. But showing you how the weaponization of government really did work against Donald Trump, they filed charges in Washington. There was rumor that it was going to happen. Peter Navarro lived 50 yards from the front door of the FBI. He called them on Wednesday and said, I hear that you might be wanting to talk to me. I live just next door to you. Do I need to come in with my attorney? No, we don't need to talk to you. 2 days later, Friday, he's getting on an airplane. He's at Washington Reagan Airport. They don't get him on the way into the airport. They don't get him at his home 50 yards from their front door. They wait until he is in the doorway of the airplane, and the FBI shows up, and they put him in handcuffs, and they arrest him. He's on his way here to be on the show. You know what he used his only phone call for? to call us and tell us he wasn't going to make it.
I was on my way to Nashville today to do a TV appearance with Mike Huckabee show, right? And instead of coming to my door where I live, which, by the way, is right next to the FBI, instead of calling me and say, hey, we need you down at court, we've got a warrant for you, I would have gladly come. What did they do? They intercepted me getting on the plane.
He went to prison for this. That's what's bad. He served several months in a federal prison because he followed what the Constitution clearly says about not divulging conversations that you have with the president. Because if Congress could make a president talk or make his staff talk about everything that they had a curiosity over, government would absolutely be in a total standstill.
Well, he made it here this time. Would you please welcome to the show, Peter Navarro?
A good excuse, right, for not showing up, right?
You know, Peter, I think the reception you got here might be just a hair better than what you got at the Department of Justice, right?
Yeah, I guess it was worth it.
Wow. Walt Disney said, where's the laughter? We got that part out of the way. Where are the tears? What's something unexpected that there was an emotional time over these last 7 years that you didn't expect and wasn't on the script, let's say?
We've always, in this show, had an affinity for veterans.
Please join me in giving a hero's welcome to Army Ranger Hall of Fame member and Medal of Honor recipient, Gary Luttrell. Welcome, Gary. Good to be here.
This is our freedom flag over in the right corner. They are from all over the U.S. and abroad. I tried to count them recently. I lost count at over 1,000.
Every time we can do something for veterans, it's always special, and we do a lot. We've had some moments with veterans, particularly those who have been focused on preventing veterans suicide. There are 22 military veterans who take their own lives every single day. This is horrendous. You think about all the resources that we fail to deliver to those who have given their lives. They have signed their life, their bodies, as a blank check to the government. And they'll say, send me anywhere you want me to do, put any weapon in my hand, put me before any enemy, and I will do what I'm told to do to preserve my country and its freedom. And there have been some moments, and one that I will always remember, that as we talked to this veterans organization, Gary Sinise has led the Gary Sinise Foundation. He's one of the most remarkable people.
It is such an honor to welcome back to the show one of the finest Americans I've ever known. Please welcome Gary Sinise.
He was telling about all the things that he had seen in his work with veterans. But then he had to talk about his own son, Mac, who died of a horrific disease and took his life over a period of almost a year. And you could see in Gary this incredible grief for his own son, but he equated it to the fact that so many families had their sons. They didn't have a year to prepare for their death, knowing that this disease would get them. They got the phone call in the middle of the night or the knock on the door from the chaplain. And for Gary to be able to transfer so much of his own personal grief toward those who experienced it in their homes and lives. You know, I always loved him. He's been a friend for a long time. But that, I mean, I don't think there was anyone in this audience that was not deeply moved by his story.
This has been a tough year for you and your family. And I kind of want to just dig right into it because it's a powerful message I think you have for all of us. Your son, Mac, who worked for the foundation, but is also a stellar musician, contracted a very rare form of cancer and passed away in January of this year. And I can't even begin to imagine just the grief and the pain of dealing with that over these past several months and years.
Yeah, it's been a tough fight. He was diagnosed in 2018 with this rare cancer called chordoma. He was a musician from the age of 9, exceptional drummer and a composer. He went to USC Music School. Early last year, 2023, he said to me, "Dad, there's a piece of music that I never finished that I think I'd like to try to work on." He teamed up with a buddy of his from college. Mac couldn't play drums anymore because he was paralyzed from the chest down, but he picked up the harmonica. His mom suggested he get a harmonica. He started playing, and he created this album that we put out, and he died about 2 months later.
He had a special idea of what would happen to the proceeds for this album. What did he want for that?
All the proceeds for the album go to the Gary Sinise Foundation to help our veterans. So it's it's positive.
It is a wonderful album.
Governor, we're seated here in the Huckabee Theater. What a beautiful location. This has been the home of 378 episodes of the Huckabee Show. And you've, served as governor of Arkansas 10 years. You were governor. You ran for president. You've been television personality. You were a Baptist minister for even before all that, and now ambassador. That's a pretty long little resume there, Governor.
Sounds like a real job jumper. Yeah. Couldn't hold anything down.
Jack of all trades. And the responsibility is going to hit you at some point, if it hasn't already, that there's much to do in regard to this. And, something that we, are living our lives concerning, the biblical account, everything that the Bible declares about the nation of Israel, and his eyes will never depart from it. All of that kind of help us understand your thoughts in regard to this life lived to the point where we're getting ready to meet you in Jerusalem.
What weighs on me is that as much as I've loved doing television shows and many of the things I've done, there will be only 2 jobs in my life where the decisions that I made, the things that I did, could literally affect life and death for someone. One was governor, made decisions that truly affected life and death for people. Not just carrying out a death penalty, that certainly did it, but the decisions when a disaster struck, or decisions with the policy as to whether people would get medical care, there were just many, many times. And it was very, very heavy upon the heart to know that. This is going to be one of those positions where you don't have the luxury of making a mistake, because it could have an impact on the lives of a lot of innocent people. The Middle East is a hotbed, has been forever, and it hadn't cooled off any. And so the policies that the president will put in place that will affect the peace of Israel, the peace of the Middle East, the stability of it, especially when I was there not long after October 7th, and I could see what are the worst things that could happen. Well, I saw it. You don't ever want to see that again. And you just pray that God can use me. This is my prayer, so that never happens ever again.
I cannot imagine under any circumstances that any right-minded person would find it acceptable to support or to even acknowledge that there was justification in any way for the massacre of innocent civilians on October the 7th. I will be absolutely clear to carry the president's policies. They have been clear that Hamas will have no future in Gaza. It can't. Hamas is not a government, it's not a standing army, it is a terrorist organization, and they acted like it. And they must be treated as such.
And that we can help craft some type of setting in the Middle East, and specifically in Israel, that gives the people, God's people, the Jewish people, security and a sense of serenity. They're the most resilient people on the planet. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
But I will remember a conversation I had with a young mother of 4 children when I was there several months ago. And I was talking with her about her husband, who was an IDF soldier. He was in Gaza. She never knew on any given day whether he would be alive or dead. She's taking care of 4 kids when rockets are coming from Lebanon. Rockets are coming from Gaza. And several times a night, she's having to gather up her 4 children and go to the shelter because she doesn't know if that bomb's coming at them. The sirens are going off. She has no choice. She has 15 seconds to get them there. And I'll never forget, here she's got great faith, great optimism that it's going to be okay. But here's what she said, and Laurie, you can appreciate this as a mother. She said, you know, I don't mind having to fight. I don't mind having to be prepared. I'm just tired. Oh, it really hit me hard because in her world, she wasn't complaining. She understood that as an Israeli and as a Jewish woman that the world has turned their hatred toward. That was part of what she had to live with. But she also acknowledged that human reality, that having to get up several times a night and rush her kids and then get them up in the next morning, feed them breakfast, getting them to school, being the only parent because her husband is being shot at in Gaza. And she just put it in such a simple, blessed way. I'm tired. And I thought, I pray the day comes when she gets a good night's rest, sleeps all night long, doesn't have to rush her kids to shelter, and she's not tired anymore.
My goodness. Wow.
Amen.
Well, there is bittersweet a feeling. We dreamed of the day we would have a show that was like the one that you've now done, you know, for 7 years. We dreamed that we could have a voice into, you know, kind of current event commentary. You're a musician, so it was your dream to have this band over here with Trey and the guys, and everything had to come together. This theater that my parents bought back in the 90s to do content. We modified it. We made it your home. It's a very bittersweet thing to say goodbye, but the idea that you're going to go and serve the administration as the ambassador to Israel is just one of the most uplifting, beautiful moments. And so congratulations, go with God. We pray blessings on you, Mike Huckabee. We pray that the wisdom of the Lord fills you in a way that is new and afresh. You'll be astounded by even the thoughts and the ability that you'll have in that new role. You know, at some point we have to flip the lights off in here and say goodbye, but maybe it's not, but just for a number of years. You know, maybe we'll see you on the other side of this, and God willing, we'll see you on the other side of this. But for now, you have something very important to do, and we're with you, my friend, and we're behind you, and the TBN partners are behind you, and we need to organize tours. We're going to bring people, and you can come speak to them, and you know we can do all that kind of stuff.
It's only just begun.
Yeah, it's a new day. The final thought, the final word is the ambassadors.
It has been the greatest ride of my life, and I'm deeply grateful to you, to Laurie, to all the TBN family who helped dream the dream from the beginning. And certainly to this incredible team of professionals that I've had the privilege of working with here. Greatest team, most authentic Christians, and just a joy to be able to work with. They've truly become family. And it's why the 7 years seems like a very brief 7 months at most. And it'll be the part I'll miss the most.
Go with God, my friend.
Thank you.
We love you.